which time both of those vehicles lost control.
A fatal car chase in Keene ends the chase for a Massachusetts escaped prisoner. And can extra workers stop New Hampshire's growing backlog of child support cases?
Serving Vermont and New Hampshire from the Connecticut River Valley. Live from the WNNE TV studios, it's News 31 with Maureen Hayes.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. Here's what's happening. An escaped killer from Massachusetts is dead following a high-speed chase in Keene, New Hampshire. Authorities say the victim, Robert Stewart, had just shot a Bay State police officer when he was spotted in Cheshire County. News 31's Bruce Lyons has more on the story.
61-year-old Robert Stewart died Sunday when the stolen Jeep he was in crashed after a high-speed chase with police. Stewart, a convicted murderer, escaped from a Massachusetts jail 10 days ago. Late Saturday night, a Shirley, Massachusetts police officer, James Mickle, spotted Stewart and attempted to stop him, but Stewart shot and wounded him. Stewart then headed north into New Hampshire, where Keene police spotted him and learned the Jeep he was driving was stolen, and they attempted to stop him.
He dodged one cruiser, one state police cruiser, hit a Keene police cruiser head-on, and continued south on Main Street onto Route 12 south at very high rates of speed. The Jeep intentionally hit the side of the state police cruiser, at which time both of those vehicles lost control. And the Jeep left the road, was in a severe crash, and the operator was pinned in the vehicle.
Stewart was pronounced dead at the scene. He was still clutching the handgun used in the Massachusetts shooting. The officer involved in the ramming incident suffered minor injuries. Bruce Lyons, News 31.
Stewart, whose criminal record dates back to the 1950s, was eligible for parole in just 7 months. 3 days after fire ripped through a trucking depot in Plainfield, New Hampshire, officials are still baffled about what caused the blaze. Right now they're looking at the building's lunchroom as a possible point of origin. The structure housed D&J Transport and B&S Leasing. 7 tractor-trailer trucks were destroyed in the fire, each worth up to $100,000. Neither the owner of the building, Don Berwick, nor any of his sons would comment today, except to say that the insurance adjuster would be by to assess the damages. None of the debris left by the fire poses any immediate environmental health hazards. Judge John Fairbanks' daughter revealed she tried to get her father to surrender in the final days before his suicide and that he seemed to be considering it. Meg Middleton of Concord now says just days before Fairbanks' body was found in Nevada, he called the family and asked them for money. Middleton believes her father's theft wasn't planned, but that he stole from his clients to recoup losses from the 1987 stock market crash. New Hampshire Attorney General Jeff Howard says the family's talk with the fugitive judge was not illegal. Police have now identified the young man who hit a tree and died Saturday at the Pico ski area in Sherburne, Vermont. They say 23-year-old Dennis Miller of Darien, Connecticut, crashed while skiing one of Pico's difficult trails at high speed. His death is the first fatality on the Pico slopes in 5 years. $1.2 million spells relief for the New Hampshire Office of Child Support. The state office hopes to acquire the money to save money. News 31's Paul McGonigal explains.
They're backlogged in Concord. At the New Hampshire Office of Child Support, they've got 2 goals: to establish and enforce child support orders. But both appear to be hindered by the lack of time and workers.
We have about 13,000 cases still right now that need child support orders established. And so by adding staff to that particular function, we will be able to establish child support orders on a much more timely basis, thereby bringing more money into both the state of New Hampshire and into families who are in need of the child support.
Currently, the Office of Child Support employs 165 people. In part, Senate Bill 759 calls for an office expansion by creating 27 additional case workers. Their goal will be to minimize the current backload. Child support officials believe an appropriated $1.2 million for the new positions is an investment. The state will actually save money by collecting what is due in child support payments from deadbeats and by keeping mothers and children off welfare.
Adding the 27 additional workers, we would gear them primarily towards the establishment of orders. Quite a few of those positions would also be towards establishing orders in interstate cases, and that is where one of the parties resides in another state, because that is one of the areas where we have a very difficult time because the interstate process is very slow, very time-consuming.
The bill has passed the Senate, and a House hearing on the child support bill will be held tomorrow morning in Concord. For News 31, I'm Paul McGonigal.
Governor Stephen Merrill is expected to consider the child support bill only if the spending is placed on next year's budget. Feeding the hungry and helping family farmers are two goals that U.S. Agriculture Secretary Mike Espy says can be achieved together. Espy was in Burlington today speaking at a conference on childhood hunger. He says investing in nutrition programs, especially for women and children, helps reduce health care costs in the long run. What's more, he says it can help farmers find new markets for their products.
I firmly believe that this government's responsibility is not only to help agriculture producers grow healthy crops and to help farmers grow healthy farm income. Government's responsibility must extend to helping grow healthy people.
Espy was greeted by a handful of protesters today calling on the Secretary to support the Dairy Nutrition Act. That plan would guarantee dairy farmers a higher price for their milk in exchange for selling milk to the government at bargain prices. An Espy spokesman says the idea sounds interesting. You may notice that milk prices are up this spring, and the dairy industry blames the hikes on last year's Midwest flooding. It's predicted prices will be an average of 50 cents higher than last year, and while consumers will pay more, it seems New England dairy farmers are in a good position for profits. Since milk prices here are based on Midwest prices, New England farmers will now benefit from the hike made to balance out the losses in Midwest milk production after all that area's flood damage. The decision of Rumney Senator Wayne King to leave the New Hampshire Senate today has opened rumors he may soon become Governor Steve Merrill's new Democratic challenger. King spent 3 terms in the Senate and is the first Democrat to represent the state's largely Republican District 2 since the Civil War. King says his district gave a Democrat a chance, so he never took them for granted. King plans to tell more about a bid for governor later this week. Congressman Dick Sweat gets high marks from Granite State seniors. The New Hampshire Association for the Elderly rated the state's congressional delegation, and Sweat came out on top with 67%, followed by fellow Representative Bill Zeleth, who had 10%, and Senators Bob Smith and Judd Gregg also received 10% each. Sweat cited his pro-senior voting record for his high ranking.
We're going to see a great many discussions revolving around entitlement caps or cutbacks, means testing, and things like that. I think that we have to be very careful about those folks who are unable to meet the financial requirements that this day and age expects of them.
Sweat told seniors in Lebanon today they don't have any immediate need to worry when it comes to health care reform. And coming up on News 31, Mark Sudol joins us to recap a busy day in sports. He'll have opening day highlights of the Red Sox and the NCAA Women's Championship. But first, we'll go straight to the top for some straight talk on Vermont's health care reform.
And when we join you with weather, no need mincing words. Tomorrow good, Wednesday bad. We'll tell you more when we come back.
If you can't be home at 6 o'clock for News 31, you can listen each night on AM 910 WNHV or AM 1230 WTSV, the Valley's AM.
At John Grapponi Ford, we don't rely on false promises or ridiculous offers too good to be true. We rely on you. Here are a few things we thought you should know about us. We're the #1 volume truck dealer in New Hampshire, #2 in Ford car sales in New Hampshire. In New England, we're #3 in Ford truck sales, and we're #9 in car sales in all of New England. We always have at least 300 new vehicles in stock for your selection at prices that are always the best. We are John Grapponi Ford at the Auto Junction in Concord.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a duck.
Quack, quack.
It's the Dutchman Duck, and it's only $79.94 every day at Meckelson RV. That's right, just $79.94 for a brand new Dutchman travel trailer, loaded with TV antenna, stereo, ducted heat, monitor panel, and much more. Hey, that's not a special sale price. That's not even a one-time only price. That's another everyday low price from Meckelson RV, Vermont's premier RV dealer. See us today.
Somewhere past the sea,
Yeah. Waiting for me. My lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing.
In a life-threatening emergency, you should know what to do. Say a loved one exhibits unusual symptoms. The first thing to do... Clear! No. The first thing to do is pick up the phone and dial your local emergency number.
Call 911 first.
Right. To learn more about life-saving techniques, contact your Red Cross.
If anyone ever tells you that you ask too many questions, that your thoughts aren't important, or you're trying too hard, if they say you should never stand out, get involved, stick up for what you believe, and if they tell you that you think too much, or that you dream too much, truth, if anyone ever tells you you're too much anything, or not enough anything, well, what they think means nothing.
A message from the U.S. Navy, where we believe the only way to grow is to rise to the challenge.
Just mentioning the words healthcare reform sparks debate wherever you go, and it's having the same effect in the Vermont legislature. While some type of reform is expected, the differences are keeping lawmakers from getting together on the plan. There's still time, but Governor Howard Dean isn't holding his breath. In a one-on-one interview today, News 31's Bruce Lyons found out why.
Looks like the legislature is going to pass the idea of health care reform and leave the tougher decisions of how to fund it next year.
Well,
it sounds like you're totally opposed to that.
Yeah, I am opposed to that, and I very well might not sign a health care bill that did that. I don't believe that tough decisions should be put off. I think they should be made this year. They're not going to get any easier next year, so we need to go ahead with health care reform. I know it means some difficult decisions. We need to control costs for the business community and for individuals, and we need to make sure that people have access to health care that cannot be taken away. We can do that in Vermont. We can do it this year. If the legislature has just appropriated $750,000 more to save for 6 weeks more, if the legislature comes out of this session without health care reform after staying for another 6 weeks, I think they're going to have a lot of explaining to do to the public.
Now, you're opposed to funding it through raising the income tax.
That's correct.
There are a lot of ideas floating around. Here we are in early April. Where do you see the best chance of compromise for funding this very controversial?
I think it'll be fairly straightforward. There is a tax on health care premiums that can be used, and the cigarette tax can and should be used because people who smoke cigarettes use more health care and they ought to pay something more for it. And there should be a requirement that all employers pay something toward the health care for their employees. I don't think it has to be 80%. It may not even have to be 50%, but they ought to pay something.
It was also reported last week that so far $1 million had been spent on lobbying at the State House. Given the apparent lack of progress with health care reform, would you say the lobbyists' money to date has been well spent?
No, I think that the reason the House didn't make a tough decision is because it didn't make the tough decisions about how to finance it is because they were exhausted. They tried to push through a $750 million tax package, and that obviously wasn't going to fly, and so they were unable to proceed, and they got the bill over to the Senate. Frankly, I'm just as glad they got the bill over. They did make some tough decisions. They did a lot of work on the infrastructure. Now the Senate needs to make the tough financing decision and send it back to the House for conference committee.
Well, Easter was a great day, and so was baseball's opening day. But is this a true indication that we're in the clear when it comes to spring weather? Let's go to Tom now to find out what's in store for this week. Tom?
At least tomorrow we'll feel that way, Maureen. Tonight, clear and chilly at 26. Tomorrow, though, we'll be into the 60s. All the details. Stay tuned.
It's the New Hampshire Lottery's 30th birthday. And to celebrate 30 years and $300 million in aid to New Hampshire education, we came up with a special instant scratch game called 30 Years. Each ticket only costs $1, and the grand prize is really worth celebrating. 30 years, the lottery's